The third Freeplay competition is now over, and this was the first time I held the competition in CHIMPS mode, and I was very excited to see what kind of setups you guys could cook up, and I was not disappointed. The rules for this competition was simple. CHIMPS mode on 3 mines round using only the center loop, and the only tower band was Isili, and for the first time in this competition series you had to play using a challenge code to make sure everyone had the same seed so everyone's rounds are exactly the same. This time around we got 32 submissions, which is the most amount of submissions we've had so far, so that was very fun to see. And this time I also put up a little prize. We only do these competitions for fun, but this time I decided to throw in a little $50 Steam gift card for the winner. I was also very happy to see that most of the setups did look pretty different, and due to Isili being banned here, there is a variety of hero choices that you can go with that all perform okay, and we did end up seeing a bunch of different heroes being used. The hero distribution looked like this. 15 players used Adora, 5 used Geraldo, 3 used Sai, 3 for Gwen, 2 for Striker, 1 for Etienne, 1 for Churchill, 1 Corvus and 1 Soda. So Adora was by far the most popular choice, so we're probably gonna see a bunch of strong temple-based setups, but Geraldo was also very popular. He does provide some good utility, especially with the rejuves for your strong abilities, and it also works on the Legend of the Knight's passive black hole, so that can save you from a bunch of really hard rounds. I should also remind you that for this challenge, the removal cost was set to just 25%, so mining the rocks was very cheap, which gave you a lot of cash for the early game. And some players higher up on the leaderboard also went for some cash regrow farming. In the announcement video we did talk about this strat, and we provided some videos explaining the concept and a tutorial for the specific competition for the people who wanted to go the extra mile. So right now you're watching the final setups that these players were able to create, and as we get higher in the rankings I'm gonna start having a closer look at what towers they chose, and as we get up to the very top entries we're gonna look into the game they played and how they managed to create their setups. Here we have Hilly reaching round 274. The setup is based around a temple with max sacrifices in magic and support, along with some primary sacrifices, and the hero chosen is Gwen for the +1 damage to the ninja army. To top off the ninja army, he also got a sentry champion that provides great damage for the price and synergizes well with the other towers he has. He's got a permabrew, homeland and ultra boost to buff them, and for debuffs he's got the cripple, gluestorm and esprit, but skipped out on the tier 4 ice. He also had a tier 4 sniper set to last to potentially help stall out some rounds, although I'm not sure how helpful that was due to him having a ninja based setup with seeking attacks. He managed to get to round 274, ending the game with a lot of cash due to him going for a very cheap setup and then running out of room to place more towers. Very respectable score, well done. Next we have Tommy B and SF, making it 4 rounds further. This setup is very similar but with some important distinctions. The temple also has max magic and support sacrifices, but he went for a few thousand in military instead of primary. The hero is Geraldo instead of Gwen, despite also having a ninja army that benefits a lot from the +1 damage, and the reasoning is pretty smart. Geraldo's Gary Fires also provides a really good amount of extra damage to the shinobis, and having the rejuve potions he'll be able to get out of a lot of really hard rounds because he saved room for him to buy the Legend of the Night and super mines. So this way he's able to make use of the cash that he makes in the late game and ends up with a stronger setup, and he also decided to get an energizer for the shorter cooldowns. And the only surprising things about the setup is that he skipped out on the sentry champion, and just like Hilly he also skipped out on the tier 4 ice. Plus, he also skipped out on the glue debuff entirely, and the positioning of the Esprit is a bit unorthodox. But thanks to Tommy planning ahead and placing down a super monkey and a spike factory as he was building his setup, he was able to make use of most of the cash that he made in this game and thus made it quite far. Well done. And next up we have Dogs, who you might remember from winning the first Freeplay competition, getting 3rd place in the second one, and also creating the Freeplay database. For this competition, which lasted about a month, Dogs was busy with school for most of it as he was about to graduate graduate, and for some reason decided to prioritize graduating over taking part in the competition. I mean, get your priorities straight. But he still had a little bit of time to participate after graduating. It wasn't enough to get him inside of the top 3 again, but managing to get to around 285 in the little time he had is very impressive and shows strong will to take part in the competition. His setup is a triple temple setup, with the first one up top being max sacrifices in primary, military and support, and the second one was 50k primary, magic and then a little bit of support to stack the discounts, and then the third temple was just raw damage with 50k in everything except for support. So he's got a lot of damage coming from the temples, and thus the hero is a Dora for some blood sacrifices, and he's also got the supermines and the Legend of the Night. And for buffs he's got a permabrew, homeland, call to arms, overclock and ultra boost. In terms of debuffs he's got the Sabo and a tier 4 ice, and that's it. So most of his cash went into damage rather than debuffs, and I'm guessing that he had to use his cash late game for Adora sacrifices in order to survive, making it impossible for him to save up to something like an Esprit. He also had a Bloon Crush and a tier 4 sniper set to last, and these towers serve the purpose of stalling the rounds and pushing back the insides of any bads that pop. And despite the little time Dogs was working with, he still managed to get a very nice score. Good job. Next we have 2 players tied at round 301, so this must have been a very tough one. The first player is Brigith, and his setup is a double temple one, with the first one having 50k support, 50k magic and a bit of primary, and the second one is 50k primary with a bit of military and some support for the discount stack. Other strong towers include the Legend of the Night and the anti-bloon of all things. Very interesting choice there. And in terms of buffs we got the usual permabrew, homeland and ultra boost. Debuffs we got the Sabo and all of the damage debuffs, and also an energizer for the shorter cooldowns, and even a primary mentoring which gets some shorter cooldowns for the glue. He also got 2 overclocks to buff his strong tower some more, and an absolute 0 to help deal with bads popping late. Now, for scores this high, you would expect the setup to have a call to arms to alternate the homeland with, and Brigith did have one, but round 300 was so hard that the only way he could beat it was to sacrifice the homeland after using it, and then upgrade his call to arms to homeland so he could have more uptime on that round. Very cool to see that he thought of this brilliant move just to push his game one round further. Congratulations to Brigith, very well played. The second player who died at 301 was Gamer J, also with a double temple setup. The first one was 50k support and primary with a bit of military, and the second one was 50k in primary and military with a bit of magic. Other strong DPS towers are Supermines, Sentry Champion and Tax Zone, and he's also got all the tier 5 ninjas with a couple of shinobis, and he's also got a Mermonkey to create water for the Energizer, but he also got a carrier flagship, and the way he placed his Mermonkey, the right side temple is on its water, so it also gets the carrier flagship buff. In terms of the other buffs, he's got all the important ones you would expect, except you might notice that there isn't any ultra boost, but he did have the ultra boost in the early game, so he used that to give stacks to all of the important towers before he sacrificed the ultra boost to a temple as the support sacrifice. Interesting move. And debuffs he also had all of them, but when he beat round 300 he sacrificed his tier 4 ice and then replaced it with an overclock. Overall, very nice setup, very well done to Gamer J. Next, we got my man Lieutenant Koro, who made it one round further to round 302, and while he also has a double temple setup, he went for Geraldo as his hero, and he has stacked a whole lot of sun avatars really close to each other using Geraldo's cape. The first temple has max sacrifices in everything except military, and the second one has max sacrifices in military, magic, and a little bit of support for the discount stack. In terms of buffs, at this point all the players are gonna have all the important ones, so I'll just point out the ones that he skipped. He didn't get the call to arms, but he does have a second village, which is a bottom path. That was an interesting choice, but it probably saved him a bunch of cash on all those Sun Avatar upgrades and more, because its range covers the entire circle. Debuffs, he's got all of them, and like before, we see the Mermonkey, mostly for the sake of getting the Energizer, but Koro also got the Carrier, but the Mermonkey is not close enough to generate water under either temple, so they are not getting the Carrier buff. But getting the Carrier is still a good idea because it does provide you with some extra room to place down towers, assuming you get the upgrades for the boat after placing down the towers around it so you don't get any problems placing down towers later on. To deal with the insides of the bats, he went for a Monarch of Storms instead of a Bloon Crush, and he got a Sentry Champion to add on top of all the Sun Avatar damage, and he doesn't have Super Mines, nor does he have the Legend of the Night, despite that he's playing with Geraldo. That would greatly improve the utility of the black hole, so it seems that a lot of cash went into creating a lot of those Sun Avatars and strong temples. But this setup was still stronger than the two setups that got stuck on the round before on 301 that had most of those things, so this army of closely stacked Sun Avatars using Geraldo's cape seems to work wonders when given all the Ultra Boost stacks and debuffs and all the rest. Really original and strong setup. Nice job. Now we're making a pretty big jump in rounds with 7A 9S7 making it around 316. The first temple is maxed out in magic and support plus 15k military, while the second one is only maxed in magic, also with 15k military and then 2k support for the discount stack. The rest of the setup feels like a hybrid between what we saw from Koro and the two players behind him. This guy went for Geraldo just like Koro, stacking a lot of Sun Avatars using the cape item, but also managed to get both Homeland and Call to Arms, and he also got the Legend of the Night. This guy went pretty chill with the temple sacrifices, saving a lot of cash there, which might have helped him out in managing to afford the Legend of the Night. And interestingly, he's got 3 villages, with the third one being the primary expertise. Although that village was a 402 for most of the game, so the reason for the tower was to get some discounts on the Sun Avatars and lower the cooldown of the glue, and then in the super late game when he couldn't spend his cash on anything else, only then did he buy the tier 5 upgrade to get some more reduced cooldown on the glue and a tiny bit of damage. So this setup has pretty much everything, all of the buffs and debuffs you would expect. He didn't have any space to go for overclocks and he didn't get the super mines, but except those two things, he fit pretty much all of it in there. He's got the Energizer, Carrier, cheap damage like the Tax Zone and S-Champ, the expensive towers like the Temples, Legend of the Night, tons of buffs, all the debuffs, stacked Sun Avatars. Really nice job on fitting and managing to afford all of this, and it looks like it was worth it because jumping 14 rounds from the player behind you is pretty darn big. Great job. And then we have our own Jackalip, making it around 319 with perhaps the strangest and most surprising setup I've seen so far, so let's dissect this. Starting with the temple, he's only got one, and it is maxed out in everything except military, and the hero is Geraldo. And the rest of the damage towers is like a buffet of all kinds of random shit. You got the S-Champ, Tag Zone, Avatar of Wrath, Grandmaster Ninja, Bloon Crush, Mad, Sub-Commander, Archmage, Carrier, Plasma Monkey Fan Club Army, Legend of the Night, and Inferno Ring. No offense, but this setup looks like it was built by an 11-year-old on crack. For buffs, we have all of the expected stuff, including a lot of overclocks, and debuffs, we have all of them. He's also got some towers placed that I'm assuming he was hoping to be able to upgrade but didn't get enough cash in time, like the Spike Factory, hoping to turn that into super mines, and the buckshot on top of the Carrier, and also a little boomerang. Honestly, I'm a little bit surprised at how strong this setup turned out to be, but also there's a few things that he obviously did right, like one of them being to bring a lot of overclocks. That is usually a good decision, and we haven't seen the Mad being used a lot, but I think that was also a good idea to bring that tower. And I think something that contributed to this making it this far is just Jackalip's skill when it comes to late game. I think he's very good at putting in the work needed to figure out the perfect ability timings to get past those very difficult rounds that may look unbeatable at first glance. So very good job to Jackalip for getting this far. Making it to 319 proves it must be a strong setup, but you ain't getting any bonus points for its appearance. Quit the crack, bro. And now we're down to the top 3 spots on the leaderboard. At third place we have Minimitre tied with the Steel, both making it around 333, which is yet another huge jump in rounds. Starting with Minimitre, he began his game by doing some regrow farming for bonus cash, just like all the other top placements, and as you can see he's using a bunch of mods because in this competition all quality of life mods were allowed. Then he turns his regrow farming setup into his first temple, which has 50k support, 15k military and 25k primary, and he also Chinooks a Dartling into the temple when creating it in order to save space for the future. Then he immediately starts working on the next temple, which is going to be 50k in primary and magic and 15k in military, and for this temple he's once again going to do some Chinook gaming to fit more towers. This time it's going to be a mermonkey that's going to be moved into one of the temple's footprint, which will later cause the temple to be on water and get the carrier buff. After that he gets an ultra boost and starts applying stacks to everything he's got, and then he's gonna start working on his third and final temple, which is gonna have the same sacrifices as the last one. Once that's done, it's time to add some effective buffs and debuffs to amplify the defense, like the Sabo, Call to Arms and the Bloon Crush to help with everything smaller than a bad, and during this time he's also placing down some more towers and keeps applying the ultra boost stacks constantly. The next big upgrades are getting Homeland, Permabrew, Energizer and some more debuffs, and also adding some more cost-effective defense like the S-Champ and the Tack Zone, and getting those will make the save up for more expensive towers a lot easier. Then he also gets a bunch of overclocks, which is also very cost-effective, and then he can focus on saving up cash for the more expensive towers, and the first one is gonna be the Mad, and after that the Super Mines, but that tower is very expensive so the save up is gonna take a while. It's not until after completing round 317 that he can finally afford the upgrade, and now his setup is pretty much complete other than adding a few more overclocks. The tier 4 ice debuff will occasionally be missing from the screen due to him sometimes using it as a sacrifice to Adora. Very good job on building this setup. You got 3 very strong temples buffed by Adora, saved a lot of space with the Chinook moves, and managing to afford some expensive towers like the S-Mines and Mad, along with all the debuffs and the buffs including a lot of overclocks. Congrats to Minimitre for a tied third place with round 333. And now for the player he tied with, the Steel. As expected, he begins by regrow farming until round 80 when he gets his first temple with Adora inside of it, and this temple has 50k in primary and support and 15k in military. The second temple is 50k primary, 15k military and some support for the discount stack, and he uses a Chinook to get a ninja inside of the range of the temple that is going to be the eventual Grand Sabo. After that, just like Minimitre, he will also get an ultra boost and start applying stacks, and this will defend just fine while he saves up cash for the third and final temple, which is going to be 50k in primary and magic and 15k in military. After that, the defense gets reinforced with a Homeland, Call to Arms, Sabo and Bloon Crush, and then a long save up to afford the Legend of the Night, something Minimitre chose to not have, so the Steel is taking a different approach. Then he saves up for the Permabrew, and after that yet another long save up to afford Super Mines. So Steel actually went for the more expensive towers first, instead of starting with cost-effective things like the Tack Zone and S-Champ. So he gets those towers later, and it wasn't until then that he added the first damage debuff of the game. And he also added a tower I'm surprised we haven't seen anyone else use, which is the Bottom Path Mermonkey. That paired with S-Mines is quite good, and I'm happy to see that someone chose to use it. Then he got the Top Path Mermonkey, the Carrier, Energizer, and later some Overclocks, a Grandmaster Ninja, and then the Cripple, and lastly the Mad. So compared to the guy he tied with, there are some interesting differences. Steel got the Bottom Path Mermonkey and the Legend of the Night in contrast to Minimitre, but decided to skip on the tier 4 ice and glue debuffs entirely, and due to him skipping the glue, there was no benefit to him adding a third village for the sake of reducing the glue ability's cooldown, leaving him to use that space for something else like the Harmonic and the Legend of the Night. Very good game, congrats to the Steel for third place. Moving on to second place, we have Vlip, who got 5th in the last competition, coming back with an even stronger result, reaching round 349, another huge jump. The game starts with regrow farming into the first temple, which has max sacrifices in primary, magic and support, and he does a double Chinook gaming movement to clip both an NG and a bomb shooter into the range of the temple. Now we're talking. Then begins the save up and planning for the second temple, which is gonna be 50k in primary and magic, plus 25k military, and I can't believe what I'm seeing. Another double Chinook temple, this time 2 NGs. Very, very nice, a really promising start to this setup. And history seems to repeat. The next step is to get the Ultra Boost, Sabo and Bloon Crush to help you survive the early rounds and get stacks on your towers. Several players has done this very type of starts and it seems to be very effective. The third temple is going to be the same as the last in terms of sacrifices, so very strong temples and did not go for the discount stack, and he's going to create the third temple next to Adora to clip her into the temple footprint, and Chinook a Mermonkey to clip that into the temple as well. So now we have 6 towers clipped into the temples, and that is a really high level of effort and planning. Very impressive. Then he starts adding some overclocks, some debuffs, village buffs, but surprisingly I see 2 destroyers. I wouldn't be surprised to see 1 to become the eventual carrier, but 2... that's gonna turn into something we haven't seen before. And the number of destroyers keeps on growing, from 2 to 3 to 4. And then he's adding the S-Champ, a Permabrew, Energizer, Overclocks, and more debuffs. And at this point, he still has a Chinook to move things around now and then, and eventually he will sacrifice it to Adora when he doesn't need it anymore and he wants to make use of that space. So Vlip's setup is quite different in that he's gonna skip out on a lot of high damage towers, so he's not gonna get S-Mines, he's not gonna get Mad, and instead he's gonna get a bunch of boats and a bunch of tanks and a turbocharged boomerang. Pretty surprising, to be honest. I knew that boats are very effective, they are often used in boss events too, but I did not expect to be seeing that in this competition. One expensive tower that he will get though is the Legend of the Night. In his first attempt he had S-Mines and he got around 346, but then decided to go back and try again with the Legend of the Night instead, and that allowed him to push 3 rounds further. And here he is beating round 333, which 2 players died to, tying for 3rd place. This is indeed a very tough round where he needed to make use of the passive black hole to leak a few fortified bads, but after tanking those, the rest of the round he managed to clear out pretty fast. And at this point, the setup is pretty much done. Now it's just a matter of painstakingly going through the rounds one by one, trying new ability timings to see if it works, only to see that a certain timing might get you through one round but kills you the very next, so you gotta go back and figure out some other timings that allows you to beat both rounds, and so on. This process takes hours just to get through a couple of rounds, but he does it, so a few hours later, round 349 was reached, and here is where it was game over for Vlip. Incredible game, very unexpected setup, and I loved all the Chinooking. Congrats on 2nd place. And for the number 1 spot we have Secret Identity, reaching round 366. This is another completely nuts jump in rounds, and this setup will differ in a big way from the rest. This guy competed in the boss tournament and did pretty well for himself, and also participated in the second Freeplay competition, which he won. This is the guy that was doing ace micro in the last Freeplay competition in the super late game. Absolutely cracked guy, so now he's taken home 2 Freeplay competitions in a row. This guy really locked in and went for a setup that apparently was so hard that a lot of other players didn't even attempt it, so this is gonna be fun. Like all the top games, it begins with regrow farming, and like a few of the top submissions, he did not follow the guide that was provided, but instead made his own strat for this part of the game in order to not over-sacrifice in support and get the exact sacrifices that he wanted for his particular setup. The first temple is going to be very weak, just 25k support and 15k in primary and military. I had to ask him about the exact sacrifices because he's not using the mod that shows all of that, and the reason is that this guy is playing on mobile. Yeah, this dude is on his freaking phone outclassing everyone, so he doesn't have the ability to use any of the nice quality of life mods, and he has no saves whatsoever. Unbelievable. And the second temple is gonna have even less sacrifices, 15k military, 15k primary, and a tiny bit of support for the discount stack, and after that, just like the others, it's time for the ultra boost and whatnot whilst working on temple 3. So the temple sacrifices so far has been very minimal. He's got 25k support on the first one and a few thousand on the second one, so he got the max discount, but in terms of the damage, he really doesn't have that much, and that's for a good reason, as you will see soon. When saving for the third temple, one of the military sacrifices that he prepares is a first strike sub, and the reason for that is that he will be using it to layer skip the DDTs when he pops the bad bloons, which will earn him a bit of extra cash. Something I've never even thought of doing in a CHIMPS run. Very cool. So then he saves up cash for a long time and eventually gets the final temple with 15k primary, 15k military and 2k magic. So once again he is role-playing Mr. Krabs and not spending $1 more than what he needs, and at this point you might be able to figure out why he's saving all this cash. It's because he's gonna attempt to save up to a true sun god. To do this, he'll have to get some really cost-efficient defense. A tier 4 ice and a tier 4 glue as debuffs, a call to arms, sabo, destroyers and overclocks. He has to get the most cost-efficient things he can, while at the same time making sure that the things he buys fits well into the sacrifices he's looking to get. Then he needs to save up 378k plus some more, because he's gonna need to buy back some buffs and stuff right after he gets the true sun god in order to survive, and I imagine this took some time to get it to work. Completing this save up is not easy, but on round 249 he had 420k and got the true sun god. 50k support, 50k magic, 15k military and 15k primary, and transforming Adora. Then he gets the call to arms, sabo and a main Moab to help stun DDTs and other bad insides, and now he needs to quickly add things to his setup because the rounds are quite tough at the moment despite getting the true sun god. So for a while, until he can make his setup strength outgrow the pace of the scaling, it's gonna be a bit tough, but it's gonna get easier the more things he adds. And just 20 or so rounds later, he got a carrier that is buffing the TSG, an energizer, homeland, more overclocks and a bloon crush, so now he doesn't have to rely on the main Moab. And now things are looking much stronger already, and at this point he's able to add things very quickly with this particular TSG plus dual temple setup, because he's got the maximum possible discounts from temples that you can get. So by round 300 he's added the Permabrew, Cripple, Gluestorm, Esprit, Call to Arms and S-Champ, and now he's gonna be saving up for the more expensive towers like the Supermines and the Legend of the Night, which he affords on round 326, and that was the last part completing his setup. And another cool thing he did, which I also noticed one or two other players doing, is that when sacrificing towers to Adora, they have of course calculated what towers they should sacrifice with which crosspaths to make the sacrifice not overspend or underspend, but once or twice they sacrifice a 0-3-0 Desperado so they can use his ability on the Permabrew before they sacrifice him, and that way it can reach to give the Permabrew to all the towers that are far away from the Alk. Very smart. Now he will use the rest of the cash he makes on Adora sacrifices. Well, there is actually one more thing that he's gonna use his cash on, and it's quite brilliant. When he gets to round 350 plus, the rounds are getting too hard to beat. So what he does is to do a regular Adora sacrifice before the round starts to make sure everything is buffed from the get-go, and then, in place of where the sacrifice tower was, he puts down a tier 4 bloon sabo. Then he starts the round and uses his Grand Sabo instantly, and then when his Blood Sacrifice ability comes back and the Grand Sabo is about to lose its effect, he sacrifices the Grand Sabo and then upgrades the tier 4 Bloon Sabo to tier 5. And since he got the tier 4 before the start of the round, it has had time to come off the initial cooldown, and buying the tier 5 does not create another initial cooldown, so he can now use the Grand Sabo again instantly for 100% uptime. Very impressive move. Now this does cost him some money, but again, he does have all of the discounts he can dream of, and he's managed to save up over 100k at this point, and there is nothing else to spend the money on. And turns out that despite him needing to do this here and there, he is still gaining money, so it is not a problem. Round 365 ended by using the passive black hole to leak a bunch of fortified bads, and the next round was too tough to be beaten even with 100% uptime on the Grand Sabo. absolutely amazing run from Secret Identity. Really cool to see that someone actually got the True Sun God to work. He will thus be the recipient of the $50 Steam gift card, and I'm sure he will spend it wisely. Huge thanks to everyone who participated in yet another round of the Freeplay competition, and especially to Jackalip for helping me set up the modded challenge and for taking the time to provide everyone with a map-specific guide to regrow farming that really helped everyone feel like they could participate on a higher level. Leave a like if you enjoyed the video, and stay tuned for more Freeplay competitions in 2026, and I will see you in the next one.